guys, welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about the Honda Civic Type R. Eddie bought a 2017 Honda Civic Type R a couple of years back when it was brand new, paid a little over MSRP, but that's all right. He now has experience with the car on track, stock, and since then, he's been laying down lap times like these. Civic Type R has some problems that you may not have thought about. So now that Eddie has had the car in completely stock form on track, as well as in his new modified form, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, the number one thing that he found out about this car is that it will go into limp mode if you have less than a quarter of a tank of fuel in the car, because it doesn't have like appropriate baffling in the gas tank.
No, it has probably the standard Honda Civic fuel tank, well, not oil tank, fuel tank in the car. I'm assuming they didn't change much in the fuel system. They better pump, but
yeah. So in this clip, we're watching you on track suddenly run out of fuel.
Yeah, I mean, literally, I'm going up the hill at this racetrack, PRL Motorsports Park, and it's a pretty steep hill. And the car just goes straight into limp mode, and I'm like literally hitting the gas pedal, like, where's the power? And it wasn't there. It decided to disappear, and I knew immediately what happened because I've read online. You gotta keep more than half a tank in it. You gotta keep more than half a tank in it, or else it'll go in limp mode.
That's something that, like, if you weren't aware of that and you're on a racetrack and suddenly you go into that corner and you start like, you get that check engine light, you go into limp mode, you're probably going to panic. So just a word to the wise, keep the car filled with fuel. That's very simple, but like, no, that would probably freak me out because I'd be getting in there thinking like, oh no, the car's broken.
If you didn't know about that, and if I didn't know about that,
you
would think
you broke something.
You seriously broke it, because every light on the dash goes on. Check engine light, everything comes up like emissions control system error, rev match system failure, brake match, brake problems, everything.
Let's talk about 3 levels of driving. You can be the beginner track day guy who buys your stock car, use it as your daily driver, and then on occasion, maybe 2 events a year where you go out, take it on a track, and for that, the car is fine.
You buy the Type R, and for, I would say, 75% of the owners, it's going to be fine out of the box. You can literally drive to the track and go on your HPDE, and you probably won't notice anything's wrong with the car.
Right, and as far as like cooling and stuff, as long as you're taking it reasonably easy or you're not hot lapping hardcore 100% for 20 minutes, it's going to hold up. You're going to have intake air temps are going to be fine, and your oil temps are probably going to be fine.
Again, this is all assuming that it's relatively a normal temperature outside.
Right, you're not a button willow at 106 degrees.
I mean, if it's over 90 degrees, any car is going to have issues.
But you know what? Any normal car that you haven't modified cooling systems, you're going to go out, you're going to do a few hot laps, do 1 or 2 cool downs, and not even cool downs, just like dial it down to 7/10, just that's how it works.
Your M3, you do that.
I do the same thing. Every track video you've seen me on, typically I'm out there and I'll hot lap for a while I'm chasing you down, and then once I watch my oil temps go, he knows exactly what's happening when I peel back. It's just, okay, temps are hot, I'm backing off.
Yeah, so, I mean, something that a lot of people don't also think about is if you're chasing someone really fast, you're not getting air into the engine.
That's true, because you're drafting.
You're drafting.
So if you are an intermediate, let's say you're a regular track day person, or you're chasing times, but not like hardcore. You're not trying to set records, but you are trying to be fast.
You're going more than, let's say, 3 events a year.
Yeah. So let's say the number one thing you need to change on this car are going to be the wheels and tires. The 20-inch wheels are absolutely ridiculous, and there's just like rubber bands around them.
It's a serious issue. Not only for monetary reasons, it's unbelievably expensive to keep putting 20s on your car in that size.
And those wheels are so heavy. That's getting too far into the advanced stuff right now, too. But they are heavy.
But another thing is safety. These tires roll. And when I mean roll, I mean so bad that the entire emblem, logo, and all of the data on the side of the tire on one side of it, after I did that one track event at a very small track, mind you, not very high speed.
Yeah, we were at Canaan.
Gone. completely gone.
So that means that was getting so close to actually like
Coming off the rim.
Coming off the rim. That means you're gonna debead the tire. So
Exactly.
number one, really like go get yourself a set of 18s. They don't have to be crazy. You went with Titan7s, which are a little over the top, I think.
Oh no, you can go with, you can just go on Tire Rack and buy some 18s if you really want to,
You don't need a 16-pound tire, but ideally, if you're going to be tracking your car, you're going to want a little bit of sidewall, and they gave you nothing to work with on these 20s.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so at that point, now you are probably starting to look at brake pads. The stock brakes you mentioned are good enough to deal with a track day.
To deal with a track day, 2 track days, probably even 3 track days, you'll be fine.
Yeah, and they weren't melting away.
They weren't melting. They didn't get hot. I didn't feel any overheat. Now,
you did notice that they were starting to vibrate because you were getting some issues with the rotors.
Exactly. Now they shudder. They pulsate. Now again, this could be brake deposits or it could be rotor issues.
Right.
You go on the forums. Now again, forum is not the greatest place to get answers, but most guys who heavily track these things say these rotors just don't do well with repeated heavy stopping.
And again, that all comes down to driving style on a track. So if you are just at an HPDE and you start to notice that you're getting that pulsate, like do a cool down lap. Like if you abuse your car, it's gonna break and you're gonna start breaking.
You're gonna go through stuff. You got to remember when you're going to the track, you have to always assume the unexpected.
Absolutely. And when your car is telling you something, it's like getting a pain in your arm, but you decide it's still gonna be chest day and you go and lift and then suddenly you tear something when you're lifting. Like it's the same thing with a car. If you don't treat the symptoms and give it time to cool down and heal, you're going to break stuff. So that's the way it goes. But I mean, I feel like for an intermediate driver or intermediate track use, the car is basically set up. Wheels, tires, and if you're going to pad slap it, go with something a little more aggressive, but you don't have to go crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the stock Brembo pads are fine.
So what are the major things that you changed and what did you use to make this car competitive in time attack?
I did gyro discs. 2-piece rotors. They're lightweight. You don't have to go that hard, but I did it anyways.
They look dope.
They look cool, and it's easier for me to replace the rotors and just keep the hats than keep having to replace actual pieces.
Pads?
Pads, I went with G-Lock R12s and R8s in the back. And I went with stainless lines and Motul RBF 660 fluid.
Okay, so the 660 is extremely hydroscopic, and that means it's going to absorb water. So that's a fluid that you're going to need to be bleeding a lot. So if you're like an intermediate guy and you really don't do these time attacks a lot or anything like that, like go with the 600, because if you're thinking you're going to go just run your car on the street for 6 months and then go to a track day with your 660, like it's toast already. I'm showing some footage of you driving right now. Are the pads enough? Are you going to go harder?
I'm actually going to go harder.
Yeah.
So what I learned about these pads is they are fantastic for someone who's going 7/10. But when you are going for lap times and you need that brake pedal to feel firm
every time,
the pads just don't hold the heat enough. Now again, that's not everybody. That's my driving style, and I'm a late breaker.
Sure. All right. Now you also changed some cooling stuff. So you did.
That was the most expensive endeavor for sure.
So intercooler's easy.
It's literally a probably hour-and-a-half job with a friend.
It's just pulling up a bumper and
4 bolts literally pops off for the PRL Motorsports Intercooler.
We're going to put a list of everything you've done in the description, but the real stuff, the real money maker here is that oil cooler.
Yeah, so the oil cooler, there's a bunch of companies. I'm not going to list all of them, but the one I have is a United Speed Racing style oil cooler. So it's their side-mounted oil cooler, and it's an expensive endeavor, but it's definitely necessary if you're really dragging this car hard.
And if you don't know how to do this yourself or you're a little bit uncomfortable, I would 100% recommend having someone else do it. In fact, you even had Farley at Eurotech Natick, Eurotech Motorsport, who mounted my wheels. It's nice to have peace of mind that you have your oil together. Where like, an intercooler, if that pops off, it really doesn't matter. Like your car won't explode.
Just let it. Yeah.
But if you blow out an oil line, you're causing a bad day for your car, for your reputation, and everyone else on track.
Yeah,
so
you ruin the day for everybody.
That's no good. So make sure if you're going to be doing oil stuff in an extra cooler, like you know your shit. And if you do it yourself, check your work, shake it down, and check it afterwards. Like,
exactly. I mean, even though I didn't do the work, I even had Farley go back again, and I said, just look at the lines again. And that was after me driving it for a couple, months.
Yeah.
So what else I did besides the intercooler and oil cooler? The easiest thing as well, if you have the bumper off, buy the eBay front grille.
Big.
And that makes a huge difference to the cooling system.
And that's because there's blockages in the stock grille.
So the OEM factory grille is just a big piece of plastic, and it goes across the front, the front of the bumper. And if you buy this cheapish grill, like $50 grill on eBay, it's honeycomb. Not the greatest fitment, not the greatest looking, doesn't match the grill. But if you're going for lap times like I am, I honestly could care less of how that front grille works.
Doesn't matter.
Because it's giving you a ton more air into the radiator.
So I'd recommend that if someone's even just doing intermediate stuff. If you don't want to do an intercooler, just open up the front of the car a little bit.
Literally, and it's you're taking off the bumper anyways. If you're doing all that other stuff, it's an easy no-brainer.
So that's fantastic. But you did lowering springs.
So suspension-wise, very basic stuff. Swift lowering springs, Swift Spec R lowering springs.
Sway bars?
And a rear sway bar from Eibach.
No front?
No front.
Okay. Are you going to do a front?
And I did endlinks.
Yeah.
Endlinks.
Might as well.
And then I did, and while I was in there, I put adjustable camber arms in the rear to actually balance out the rear camber. I wanted to take away some of the rear camber that the rear springs added.
So while we're on that, what is your alignment spec right now with your camber, front and rear? Ballpark.
1.5 negative in the front and 1.75 negative in the rear.
Okay.
So I would love to have more front camber, but I don't have camber plates on there yet. So, and I don't have coilovers, so I can't really add that much front camber. Those cars don't really give you much.
And now for the most outrageous part of the car, the Aero. What did you do for Aero? Because the second you see this car now, you're like, what the fuck is that?
So I did some research, and there's a man named Brian from BMSpec, and he makes multiple Aero components for various vehicles, and he came out with a Aero package for the Honda Civic Type R. It's a front splitter. It's not chassis mounted, it's bumper mounted. And then he designed, double gurney flaps that add on to the rear spoiler.
So that way you're balancing it out. So if you
exactly. So if you just run the rear, you're not gonna. I don't think it's gonna make a difference. But if you're running only the front, you're gonna notice that it's off balance, and actually the rear is probably gonna get light.
Yeah, and maybe some of you want that. Maybe you want to play with that. If you're going out and doing multiple track days, you might want to test that out and see what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's obviously up to the discretion of the driver.
For sure.
Some people like it loose. Like I like my cars really loose, so that's why I didn't put a huge like APR style racing rear wing on.
But speaking of that, you said you found the car really neutral.
Yeah, from the factory, it was unbelievably neutral.
And now?
It's still very neutral.
Yeah. So it's just faster.
It's just faster. A lot of the initial understeer that car had from the factory is now gone.
And you're running Titan7's 18-inch.
18 by 9.5, offset 45, and then the tires are 265, 35, 18... RE71R by Bridgestone. You're going to feel a little bit more torque steer with the 18s. So that's something that you definitely need to consider if you are thinking, oh, the whole torque steer thing, it doesn't exist. It exists especially if you're tuned.
Yeah.
Again, if you're tuned.
Yeah, so another thing, his car is not tuned. There's no power adders other than the fact that maybe he's getting a colder charge with an intercooler. But that's
got an intercooler, and I've got a stage 1 filter and plastic tube from PRL again. No tune, so I don't think it's adding any horsepower. It just sounds a little bit better and it flows a little bit better. Again, for cooling.
Right.
But I've got the stock downpipe, stock exhaust, stock tune.
And like here you are chasing down Z06s on a racetrack.
Yeah,
I mean, and these are experienced drivers. These are good drivers doing time attack in the T80 class at Com.
Yeah.
And like this is the thing. I mean, I think the biggest takeaway from that event, this is the first event of the season, was that a Honda Civic Type R is keeping up with track prepped like veterans in rear wheel drive sports cars, and you come in with a 4-door Honda Civic and you're keeping up, and you ended up second place in your class.
Exactly, and it was honestly nuts. I mean, I had a good friend, Jake Weil, jump in the car. He did some laps, and he set his fastest lap there that weekend in that car.
It's bonkers. So if you're wondering if the Honda Civic Type R lives up to the hype as a track car, 100% yes. The only thing you have to decide is, do you want a front-wheel drive platform for your track car?
Absolutely.
And to be honest, I'm coming around to it more and more. I think it's a lot of fun. I don't think I'm ready to bite the bullet because I don't really want to change my fleet, but I wouldn't hesitate for a second to pick up a Honda Civic Type R. So thank you so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Don't forget to respect the drive. We're just gonna have to deal with the giggling the whole time.
I'm not high, I swear. I'm not.
I didn't even ask.
I know, but that's what you were thinking.
I wasn't.
You're
paranoid. You're probably high.